Hi, my name's Keri Barnum. I'm the Executive Director of New Shelves Books, and we are here for Free Advice Friday, the hour every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, where we get to talk about publishing, marketing, pretty much an open forum just to talk about the process. And today we, of course, are taking our questions live directly on our Zoom, which you can find at newshelves.com/FAF. It's free and open to the public. Feel free to join us. Or we also take questions that are emailed in over the week and answer them live. So you can email questions with an S at freeadvicefridays.com, and we try to answer those live as well. So we've got some questions coming in through the live chat and some things that also came up throughout the week that we're going to just chat about today. So first we have a question from Jane. I've sent a new manuscript to my agent and am anxiously awaiting her response. When do I start marketing? Not even close to having a publisher yet, or even if the agent likes it. Jane, for that, I think I would start teasing out that you've finished a manuscript, that you've got something working, but I wouldn't really start talking about it until you at the very least get signed by an agent. Because as we know, the process can be long from actually pitching an agent or sending it to your agent, whether if they like it or not. Once that happens, it could still be months before it's actually sold to a publisher. And then once a publisher takes it on, it can be months to up to 2 years even for it to publish. So you don't want to market too heavily in the beginning and lose people's interest. If we kind of promise for a little too long that something's coming, people lose interest. So it's fine to say, just finished a manuscript, sent it to my agent, and I'm anxiously awaiting, send me your good vibes. Like, that's totally cool, but I wouldn't really go into a lot of detail. And your agent may come back and say, love it, but there's this big hole in the storyline and we've got to fix it. And you may end up going back to editing, something like that. So I think that that's how I would handle it. Now, if your agent comes back and says they love it, then talk about that. You know, my agent says they love it. We're going to start shopping it, and maybe hint at what it is or give your tagline. But give yourself, it's a long process. So give yourself the time to drop those little breadcrumbs so that people are still interested once the book actually comes out. Let them celebrate the big moments with you, but don't inundate them with the new information of this book that won't come out for a long time, and you won't really have much to show your followers for a long time. Let me see. Let's see, Vicky over in the chat is saying that she's using an awesome ebook for creating book interest in 20 words or fewer, covers fiction and nonfiction. It's free on Amazon. It's called Mastering Book Hooks for Authors by Rob Eager. So that's a great resource. Thank you, Vicki. I know that book hooks can be used for so many things. They can be used for social media graphics. They can be used on your sales pages. They can actually be used in your ads, whether it's Amazon ads or other ads. Having a really great hook is one of the best things you can do for yourself for marketing, because it gives yourself ammunition. I say often that you've got about 4 seconds to get someone's attention to actually get them to read your book description. And that 4 seconds can be put to great use if you've got a really good book hook. So that's great to know. Again, it's Mastering Book Hooks for Authors by Rob Eager, E-A-G-A-R. Hopefully I said that right. And it's free on Amazon, which is great. Let's see. With Findaway Voices, I am choosing the standard option. For ACX, it says I have to agree to a 7-year non-exclusive contract, but I paid my narrator and obtained ACX approval to no longer be non-exclusive. I'm assuming I'm good to go. When you are going to ACX, Wendy, it's just really important that you make sure that you're entering a non-exclusive contract. If they are trying to get you to click the button for an exclusive contract, do not do that. So without seeing it, it'd be really hard to say, but absolutely under no circumstances, if you want to go with Findaway and ACX, we do not want to click that 7-year non-exclusive, because if you agree to that, you agree to that. So I would just say, again, look at it. You can do Find a Way Voices and ACX non-exclusive. And you can share to Audible from Find a Way. So there are, yes, you can go from Find a Way to Audible. I believe you can even use both at once where you're using Find a Way and ACX, but not on an exclusive. So don't push that button, which actually segues really well into a topic that I wanted to talk about today. And that is what happens when you get bad advice. What happens when you get bad advice along your publishing journey? And when I say bad advice, I'm not saying people are sabotaging you or purposely giving you bad advice, but sometimes along the way, whether it be a helpful friend, it could be someone in the industry, it could be your peers. Eventually, you're going to get some bad advice. Hopefully here on Free Advice Fridays, we have mostly good advice, but I'm sure that there are times that, advice may not be the best for you, whether it's, for you specifically or your project. I think that when people give us advice, they're giving us their best tips most of the time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's best for your publishing journey. So very often I know that I say things like, well, it's your choice, but here's my opinion. And the reason why I do that is just because I think something or I have advice on something doesn't mean that it fits with your goals. So for example, some bad advice may be, let's say that you wrote a book. You're writing a book and you gave it to a friend to read and they said, well, I think you need to change the plot or the character. That's one person's opinion, that's one bit of advice, but that doesn't mean that you actually need to follow it. Sometimes what they're saying isn't actually great advice. And I think it's important to realize that along your writing, your publishing journey, you will get a lot of people giving you input. And a lot of times you're even inviting input. You're asking people for their opinion and for their feedback. But I think it's really, really important that as artist, essentially, you're creating this manuscript and you're creating your book covers and everything. I think it's important that we realize that when we're given advice, we have to see if that advice, it aligns with our goals. And we should do our own research. We should do our own looking into things. For example, even though it was well-intentioned, I spoke to someone recently who was advised to redo all of their covers. Now, these are great covers. They're newer, they're great covers. And, but she was advised to redo her covers because they didn't technically fit in the time period that she was writing in. And while that is technically true, notice I keep using the word technically, even though that was technically true, the advice was to redo covers, possibly retitle, which means that this person would have had to go back, recreate all of their covers, change their title, which means a new ISBN. It means they'd lose all the reviews on Amazon. It would basically be starting with the same book from scratch. And the advice was given based on historical correctness. And when I talked to this author, I said, well, let's wait and let's talk about this to see if this advice plays out in your actual goals. And let's look at the sales. Let's look at that kind of information. So what we did is we got together, we looked at her books together, we looked at the sales of what was happening, and we also looked at what would go into making these changes that had been suggested by some very well-meaning peers who are maybe a little bit more into, again, really making sure that things follow the technical aspect of historical writing. But when we looked at it, we kind of realized that these books were selling. These books, when advertised, were selling. They were selling well. There was read-through on the series. And so my advice, good or bad, was, hey, why don't you stick with what you've got? Because even though your covers are technically maybe not exactly what would be in the period, I didn't know. I haven't done extensive research, so I didn't know. They look like great historical covers. I got the meaning of the book and they're selling. And if it's selling, if it's working, and your books are well done, Do you really want to put the time, the effort, the money, and the energy into redoing all of your book covers? Because a historian or someone very much into historical research might see your book covers and say, oh, well, that's a century off, or they didn't have that kind of clothing in your time period. And so then what the author's faced with is advice two ways: advice to change, advice to stay. It's not that either one was ill-intentioned. It's not that one advice was, their advice and its opinions, but then it comes down to, what are your goals? Do your own research and look at the facts, the stats, the data, the sales. And that is, to me, what's important. It's to get the differing opinions, but then you look at the facts that play out. And so as you're on your writing, your marketing journey, we'll see a lot of times where you get advice. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's bad, but look at the facts, do your own research. Just because someone says that they are, they can say they're a book marketing person or a publishing professional, but if they are giving you information that maybe doesn't feel right or someone else is saying is wrong, we have this amazing thing called Google. Go search, go look. I had someone this week tell me that by absolutely no circumstances does Ingram Spark give out free ISBNs, so that could not be part of an issue with a book. Well, Ingram Spark does give out free ISBNs, and the author was feeling very torn and very upset because I was saying one thing and this other person who'd been helping them was saying something else. And the author, the poor author, is trusting both of us and is feeling very torn. And that's when I say, go search it for yourself. Go find out for yourself and look at the facts. And again, I think that especially when we're working with other people, we want to trust them, right? If we hire someone, we want to trust them, or if it's a friend or someone well-intentioned, it could even be in a Facebook group, which happens all the time. Bad advice is given out in Facebook groups for publishers and authors all the time. And sometimes it's just bad advice because people don't want to hurt feelings. They'll say, oh yeah, your covers are great, don't change them, because they don't want to hurt someone's feeling. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's great advice. And sometimes people just don't know what they don't know, but we have the power, if something doesn't feel right, to go and research it. And so I have to say that when you're in doubt, ask. Or if you're working with someone and something you don't understand or you've heard differently, ask them. It's not a challenge to say, well, I read this article over here from Mark Dawson that says, don't do this, and you're saying to do it. Can you tell me why? I get that sometimes. And my response is always, let me go read that article and let me see the reasoning behind it. And then I'll give you my full opinion. Because someone telling you that there's a different way of doing things, or that someone else says something differently, it's not a challenge. It's not someone being rude to you. In my opinion, it's a way to grow, to learn. And also, if I am going to stand on what I said, which is against either popular opinion or someone else in the industry, I should have some pretty good reasons, and I should be able to express those reasons to whoever's asking. And so I think that it's important when you're working with people or you're taking advice from Facebook or from friends, from family, go to the industry, do your research. Yes, we absolutely love and appreciate people who are giving us advice, including Free Advice Friday. But even if I tell you something, go do your own research, make sure that you fact check, and make sure that whatever the advice is aligns with your goals, what you're trying to do. Because I may be giving you advice as someone who really is just trying to push book sales, but you don't really care about book sales. All you care about is building your business and your newsletter list. So we may be coming at it from different angles. And again, doesn't mean anyone's malicious. It just means that if we're looking at things differently, that matters. And I've seen that specifically this week multiple times. Some of it honestly was just incorrect or bad advice, but some of it was advice that was well-meaning, but maybe not in the author's best interest to align with their goals. And it's okay to get advice and ignore it. Of course, as a parent, I'm going to say when my teenagers are older, my kids are older and teenagers, I might say it's not. But I think it's okay to get advice, to think on it, and to say, no, it's all right to do that. And so I hope that all of you feel empowered and free to do that, to kind of take the good, leave the bad, or just leave the stuff that doesn't fit with you or does not fit with your actual maybe it just doesn't fit with your ongoing opportunities or your goals. And so because I've run into that specifically this week multiple times, I wanted really to just say something about it, because advice is advice, but it doesn't mean that it's law. And so I hope that all of you on your your publishing journey, that you take advice and you're open-minded, but also that you are advocating for yourself as well through research and second opinions and all of that kind of thing, because I think that's really important. Multiple perspectives only make us better and smarter. It only broadens the way, and I hope that we all take it like that, as a learning experience and an opportunity, but not as a roadblock. So there's my spiel. Now on to the next question, and that one is about CHIRP. CHIRP is, as most of you probably know, a BookBub offshoot. So BookBub does ebooks and CHIRP does audiobooks. And if you have an audiobook and you have not yet submitted for a CHIRP deal, my friends, it's time. So BookBub, as we know, and I'm going to kind of go back and forth between the two, BookBub, as we know, is a huge opportunity for your ebooks. If you get a BookBub deal, you are probably, depending on your category, selling hundreds to thousands of copies. I've actually worked with people personally on marketing campaigns where they got a BookBub deal, and we elevated that and pushed and ended up with USA Today bestseller, certainly Amazon bestsellers, and lots of sales, reviews, that kind of thing. So BookBub is amazing for getting your ebook out. And CHIRP is the same idea, but here's the thing. BookBub, number one, there's a lot of competition. They get so many submissions that less than 10% are approved for a BookBub deal. Not only that, BookBub deals cost you money. They cost you to advertise, so it can cost anywhere from a couple $100s to, I think the most expensive one I've ever seen was $2,500 for the BookBub deal. So obviously that's quite an investment if they're asking you to shell out, let's say $1,800, something like that. That's a big investment to get your book out there. Now, I've always seen it come back to people. I've only heard of one person who said, I did a BookBub and I didn't even make my money back. It didn't really go well. Excuse me. So, it's a pretty good investment. In my opinion, BookBub is great. Now, CHIRP is an offshoot of BookBub. It's the same idea. It's where you take your audiobooks and you discount your audiobooks to $4.99 or lower. So anywhere from free to $4.99, you discount your audiobooks. You must be wide. You must be on Findaway Voices and be wide, not just through Audible. And then you go through them. You discount your audiobook and they send it out to their big subscriber list, and fingers crossed, you get a ton of new audiobook sales, which turns into sales and reviews and all the good things, which we love. Here's the thing though, CHIRP is newer than BookBub. CHIRP is in the last few years really come out, and they're still building their list. So they don't have quite as many subscribers as BookBub, and not as many people have audiobooks, because audiobooks absolutely are trending. They're growing year over year and are expected to do that till around 2027. So they're definitely growing. Audiobooks are super hot, especially for nonfiction. If you have a nonfiction book and you are comfortable narrated books by the nonfiction author, super popular. Books between 1 hour and 3 hours are super popular. Who knew? It's kind of like a podcast. And then certainly fiction books are popular as well. And again, the popularity is growing. And CHIRP, because they're a little bit newer, because they don't have as many people submitting for it, CHIRP, my friends, is free for the author. there is no charge. So if you submit to a CHIRP deal, you have to, again, have the price down from $4.99 or lower. The lower the price, the more likely you are to get picked up. And what happens is if they review your book and decide that they would like to take the CHIRP book or the audiobook for a CHIRP deal, which again, not as many people are submitting, so your chances are fairly good, then what happens is they work with Findaway Voices to discount your book. You don't even have to do anything. They work with Findaway Voices to discount your book, and then they send it out to their entire list, and you don't pay anything. You do make less per audiobook. So obviously, I think I have a client and a friend who's got a CHIRP audiobook deal going up on August the 3rd, and we kind of wanted to see what her royalties would be. So we did, we put her book, which is a fiction novel, so I think I want to say it might be 9-10 hours. But we put it down to $1.99 just to see what her royalties will be. Or was it $2.99? I don't remember. Essentially, guys, she's making like 17 cents per book. So she's not making a lot of money. Let's be very clear and honest there. If she sells 100 books, she's going to like make a couple bucks, which is kind of a downer. But as I told her, are those sales that you would have gotten anyway? Are you really missing out? Because if not, then think of it this way. You paid nothing. You're still making a small profit. And in the meantime, you're getting your book out there. It's kind of a big blast to throw it out there for everybody. And you're getting reviews. You're getting the lift, which can only help you overall. So it's not all peaches and cream in the sense of, no, you're not selling your $17.99 audiobook to 1,000 people. You're selling a discounted audiobook and making much less, but the marketing power behind it, the opportunities, the reviews, that is huge. And when you do a CHIRP deal, they push it out on one day, just like BookBub. They push it out to their list, and then you stay on CHIRP for the discounted amount for the entire month. And again, if you have an audiobook and you're on Findaway Voices, you're not exclusive through Audible, this is a huge opportunity to get in, because I think what's going to happen, and there's been kind of hints from CHIRP as well, I think that what's going to happen is once they get popular enough, they get more submissions, and once they actually are, once they have more subscribers, they will start charging just like BookBub. So now's the chance to get in if you have an audiobook, to get in and not pay anything. So hop on that while it's fresh, because who knows, CHIRP, like I said, it's been growing in popularity, and I would not be surprised if in the next year they start charging for these promotional deals. So definitely jump in. I see Caroline says that she has applied for one, which is awesome. Oh, that's hilarious. So Caroline's saying, we applied for a CHIRP deal and got a BookBub deal instead. Crazy, right? Still haven't heard on CHIRP. And again, sometimes you see that because BookBub and CHIRP are owned by the same company. They're owned by the same people. It seems that she applied for a CHIRP and they're like, oh, hey, this would do really well on BookBub, which is amazing. So jump on that. That's awesome. And so sometimes those deals kind of come up. And again, BookBub and CHIRP, it's free to apply. You just need to get a BookBub account or a CHIRP account, and then you just submit your book for a discounted amount. You have to be the publisher and have the control to get the discount down. That's the only thing. But a holy moly opportunity, and it's free to apply. And they come back and say, we'd like to run your book on this day for this amount. Do you agree? So it's not like you're locked in and then suddenly you find out you owe $2,000 to do this. It's something that you submit for. And if they say yes, you get to, again, look at the pricing and say yes or no. So I cannot find my book on BookBub. Does that mean I have a BookBub deal? Oh, I can find my, sorry. I can't read. I can find my book on BookBub. Does that mean I have a BookBub deal? No, a BookBub deal you have to submit for. It means that your book is discounted. Now, most books, BookBub, like many other book platforms, has all books. If you search your book, it's probably on there because they pull the metadata from places like Draft2Digital and Amazon, and they have the books there because BookBub is also a review center. BookBub is a little bit like Goodreads in the sense that you can track and review books, but based on what you track and what you review, they make suggestions for books that you may like at a discounted rate. So it's kind of like a sales platform with Goodreads. So you can absolutely review books, all of you. I love this. All of you who are authors, if you're an author, my friends, please go to BookBub and claim your BookBub account. It's free. You have an author profile. You can review books. You can get books reviewed there. And if your books are being reviewed on BookBub, you are more likely to get a BookBub deal. So if you know that you're going to pitch your book for a BookBub deal, before you do that, go get your author profile. Claim it. It's free. Fill it out. Go get a couple of friends to go review your book on BookBub so that they can see there's some activity and interest on their site for your book. It's just a good idea. So don't forget BookBub when you are looking for reviews, which you should always be looking for reviews. Let's see. Is there a best day or time to post to social media? There is, of course there is. Let me see. I'm going to post something here. If you go to, actually, I will post this link, but I'm also going to share my screen because, believe it or not, New Shelves here has a Pinterest account. I know Pinterest isn't for everybody, but if you are on Pinterest, please find us, please follow us. We're at New Shelves. And on New Shelves, we have these boards, which are, specific to writing inspiration, author tips, also author social media. And then we have this whole board that is New Shelves blog, and it is little infographics for our blog. And some of them are quite handy. For example, they're all handy, obviously, but there are some really handy ones. We actually have down here, all these things about size and spine color and all of this. Like here, social media cleaning checklist is really helpful. But down here, I keep getting distracted. Oh, look, what should I post? Social media for authors, where it actually talks about what you should post and where to post and all of that kind of stuff. I know I'm not logged in right now, but it actually talks about what you should post, how often you should post, all of that kind of stuff. And that's on here. And it actually goes through all the different places. And then there's another one that is specific to when you should post. And timing is everything. This one right here, and I'll share this into our chat as well, but timing is everything pin. Go pin it because it's awesome. Anna, my sidekick, created this for us, and it is amazing. It actually talks about the peak times for posting on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, highest engagement window, the best days to post. So of course, the key to social media is posting often. It is interaction and posting often, but there are certain days and times that actually have the most users on. And this little infographic right here is money because it actually talks about that and gives you a pretty easy visual to follow. So I will post that here in our chat as well. And for anyone not actually on our call, you can certainly go to Pinterest, look us up, and it's right there. Very, very helpful as far as posting times. And let me see. I want to make sure that we have that up on. Look, I'm so easily distracted. All right. So I'll make sure that we get that up. And a question from Kim. Yes, thank you. I can't even take credit for all the brilliance on Pinterest, it is all Anna, and she does the best graphics ever. And a lot of them, again, they're kind of like a quick visual, which is just awesome. And a lot of them do come from our blog content or from when we have Free Advice Fridays or topics and things like that. So Pinterest it is. Let's see, if I'm doing a second edition with a new cover, should I try to get an agent through queries or skip this because it's an older book? We actually, I love when I get to refer to our own stuff. On the New Shelves blog, we actually just had an agent who happens to be Amy Collins, post about how self-published authors get an agent. And she covered that exact topic where she's talking about what are the chances of getting an agent or getting a publisher for a book you've already put out? I just dropped it in the chat. It's at newshelves.com/blog. And the chances are very slim. If your book is already out, publishers don't really want it. They want fresh content. They want new books. Now, if your book is in this really, really rare sweet spot of where you're gaining traction and popularity, and I mean, you're selling hundreds of copies, not selling copies here and there. If you have a history of hundreds of copies sold, you're trending up, but you're not quite so popular that they feel like you've run out of readers, then a publisher or an agent might sign you for a book you've already put out. However, the chances of that are slim. I know we hear these stories of people on Wattpad, I can't talk, of Wattpad and different things like that who have been picked up after putting their stuff up on Wattpad and then pushing it out to a publisher. And it does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't. However, the chances are super slim. They're like 1 in a million. So if you've already got a book out, you're doing a second edition, I would skip the agent process. It's probably, again, if you read that article, if you meet those criteria that Amy mentions, maybe, but if not, I wouldn't go through that. Just go through, update what you want to update, change what you need to change, and then get the book back out there and focus on your marketing so you can actually sell your books. Another thing that I know we were talking about, something that came up, I believe it was this week, was kind of talking about, it's so tempting as authors, as creatives, it's so tempting to do, redo, and redo again our books, to change our covers, to get advice and change this and change that, to where we are changing our books constantly and we're never really marketing them. And at some point we have to say, my book is good. It's done, it's edited, it's got a cover, and now it's time to market it. Now, it may be that every, 10 years, you do need to update your cover to stay in line with the times if you still want to market that book. Or maybe your book came out 10 years ago and you didn't do much with it, and now you're really ready to market and it's time to refresh your book. But at some point, we have to say, my books are ready and it's time to market them. So keep that in mind too. I think that it's that fine line, and that is advice that has to meet your goals and it has to meet what you're following through with. But sometimes it's okay to be done and to market and see if it goes anywhere. All right. Yep. My book is 10 years old and I'm redoing it and I still love it, which is great. As I said, I know that we've talked, Caroline, so I know that makes sense, in my opinion, and in my humble opinion and advice. I think that completely makes sense because you're doing it with purpose. You're updating it so that you can really give it the marketing attention that you didn't get to give it at first. So I think that makes sense, but I know that you plan to redo it and market it, not stop, not just kind of do it and then redo it and redo it. You're not stalling. Let's see. Do you have a source of how to create the size and shape of infographics, images, website on the bottom for Pinterest posts? So for Pinterest posts, so let's also talk about Canva. Canva, if you go there, you can search a pin or a Pinterest template and they will actually give you a size and then you can plug in stuff. So that's a really easy way to do it. The thing to remember on Pinterest is that when you're searching, and I will actually go back here. maybe I'll go back here. I'll share again. Here we go. So when searching on Pinterest, I think what it's important to do is that when you're searching on Pinterest, real estate is key. So long pins are really popular because, let's say, Easy Dinners was up there, so let's search that one. The reason why long pins are so popular is because when you're doing a long pin, it gets more real estate. It gets longer. So this is kind of the standard size that you'll see, but getting longer real estate is very popular on Pinterest. But you definitely want something that is vertical, that's a little bit longer. And notice how all of these, they do have writing on it, and they should have writing on it. A lot of these are very image driven. Now this is specifically for food. And different things will show up differently, but in general, you've got that overall size. And so here's actually a really great example, even though these are all different, but this is what I mean by real estate. This takes up more space than this. And if I'm on Pinterest on my phone, which is one of the most used devices for Pinterest, if I'm looking at that on my phone, I don't have all of these. I think it's 2 side by side that show up. And so when I do that and it's actually looking at it, I want to take up more real estate. So having a larger graphic, having something that's longer is good for that. Rather than having something small like this, which doesn't take up quite as much space. And like I said, having templates on Canva is definitely where it's at. I love Canva for the templates because we can make it our own, but it's also a great start and there's a lot of great resources there. So if you're not on Canva, highly recommend. They have a free option and a paid option. Paid option, you get a few more tools and you also get access to some images and graphics that you would otherwise have to pay for per the image. So just depends on your needs for it. Let's see. Are there good resources to find an agent? I see a lot of large databases available, but they don't always seem up to date. Do you have a gem of a location to look? Matthew, I love that question because I, in fact, just asked an agent to write up a list for me for a blog article. So, of course, there is the author marketplace, which is very popular, sometimes not always updated. And then a lot of agents hang out on Twitter, so that's somewhere to look as well. But as far as like a really good list of places to find agents rather than good old Google, I don't have one yet, but I did ask for one, and I did ask for resources to find agents from agents. So I happened to just be chatting with some agents this week, and that was something I kind of asked for. So hopefully we will have that up on the blog soon. Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to see. I'm sure that there are some things they're going to pull up that I never would have thought of. So watch for that soon on the blog, and we will happily put that up. And hopefully, yes, Query Tracker is another one. Querytracker.net is pretty good. And all of these, let's also, since I was talking to all these agents, keep in mind that sometimes the info for an agent moves quickly. I was talking to agents and hearing that, I mean, they opened up, an agent said that they opened up queries for a certain topic and they opened it up for, I want to say it was 10 days. It might've been 9 or 10 days, and they had over 1,100 queries. So it's really something that you've got to stay on top of and definitely be in pretty often. This is not something that you say, okay, I'm just going to look for places to query for the month. It's pretty much, let's see what's available today that I can pitch for, because those things, I mean, obviously that agent then closed their queries down. So there are a lot of people who are querying agents, and so just keep that in mind as well. But hopefully we'll have some great resources up soon, because I think that it's a really interesting aspect as far as where to find agents, the best way to get to them, when, that kind of thing. Because I think that, you know, a lot of us want to go traditionally published, which I think is great. I think that there is a place for everyone, and certainly a lot of people will want to go traditionally published. Some people are going to try for traditional and then decide, hey, I just want the book out, I'm going to self-publish, or they're going to go through a hybrid or different things. So there are a lot of options, and I like to explore them all because I think that it helps us all. It's good to know stuff, as my high school English teacher often said. Let's see. How can how can an index in an ebook work if there are no page numbers? So the way that it works on an ebook is it's actually hyperlinked. The index will hyperlink to things. It does take a formatter who knows what they're doing. It does take time. Expect to pay for that expertise. But typically, if there is something like an index that you want put into an ebook, it is hyperlinked so that when they click on it, it takes them to an exact spot. And that is how that works. How would an author decide whether to use Ingram Spark versus Lulu for hardcover nonfiction printing? I think the question there is, how much control do you want to have? When you go through Lulu, you don't always have the same control. This is why, and I get it, we talked about this last week, there are people who complain about Ingram Spark, who go with other options, and that's legit. I mean, it depends on your goals and what you need from a printer and distributor. But many times with Lulu, you're going through kind of a third-party process to get to Ingram. And what happens is that you lose some control. And so I think that's what matters most. When you're going through Lulu, are you going to have the discounts you need to sell that book? Or do you need to go through Ingram Spark so you can set the discount that you need to sell into retail? Keeping in mind that when you go for retail, you've got to offer a 40% discount, which typically means on Ingram Spark, Lulu, places like that, you're offering a 55% discount. And if you've got another middleman to pay, maybe you can't offer that. So I think it's not only looking at the quality of print, but also looking at the availability. Do they have some special feature that you need at Lulu that Ingram Spark doesn't have, and you're just willing to do it even though it changes your distribution? That's legit. Again, if it's what your goals are. Also looking at the ease of ordering. Can you get that discount low enough? The control that you have. And around all things, it's looking at your goal as an author and what you want to do with the book. Maybe you're going, I know my book's not going to sell retail. It's just not a retail book, but I really want to get into libraries, so that's what I care about. Or I never intend to really sell this book much anywhere except for Amazon and hand selling it in back of the house when I'm doing conferences or things like that. And depending on your goals kind of changes my personal advice for whether or not you should print with a certain company. So again, I think it's set your goals and then go research both places based on those goals and see which one fits best for you. If I self-publish the first book in a short series, will publishers be favorable to taking the second book if the first one does well? Scott, same answer as we had before, is typically if it's a series, a publisher wants to start with the first book, not the second book. However, if the first book in the series does well, and we're talking that very sweet spot where you're selling hundreds of copies regularly, but not, 10,000 copies. If you're in that sweet spot and can pitch it to them, what they would most likely do is they wouldn't just publish the second book. They would go in for the rights for the entire series. You would have to unpublish or put out of print your first edition, and then they would republish the first book and then publish the second and third book. Again, you have to hit a really sweet spot for that, where you are selling hundreds of copies pretty regularly, but not 10,000 copies to where they're like, okay, the market's kind of gone on there. It's a business deal and they're looking for money. And so they want you to be popular enough to be marketable, but not so popular that they feel like you've already made all the money on something. So it can happen under perfect conditions. However, it's less likely. If you really want a traditional publisher, then I would say get an agent or query agents for that first book or for the series first and see if it goes anywhere. And again, we've talked about that sometimes if you're on the edge of traditional publishing or self-publishing, and you're not really sure what you want to do, I encourage people very often, give yourself a timeline, give yourself a time limit. I'm going to query agents for 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever it is. And then you decide, if I don't get an agent after that amount of time, I just want the book published and I'm going to go self-publish it. So I think that kind of plays into it as well, is timing, and set yourself time limits if you're on the edge. Now, there are authors who say, I'm going to traditionally publish or not publish at all. So I'm just going to query and keep querying and keep writing and query that. And it is what it is. And if you're cool with that, awesome. Again, it comes back to your personal goals, what you're doing. Because I've also heard people say, I think my book could get picked up by a traditional publisher, but I want my book out in the next year. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Again, it's all like, there is no bad answer. There is no wrong way to do it. As far as that goes, it's just your personal goals and what stands up to what you need and what you want, because that is kind of what you have to go for. Again, in my opinion, in my advice, which I've told you to question and research and think twice about, that's kind of how I feel about it. All right, I'm going to check Facebook. We are at the end. We've got about a couple more minutes. So if you have any more questions, drop them in the Q&A. I'm going to check the Facebook because I saw something come up on here. Oh, just people responding and laughing. So I think that's kind of where we're at. I think that we've got through all of our questions, but if you do have questions, drop them in the Q&A. Again, if you're not able to join us live, please feel free to email in questions@freeadvicefridays.com. We always invite your questions there. Replays do come up. They go up on Mondays on YouTube. So if you just go to youtube.com/newshelvesbooks, we put all of those up on Monday, and then you can rewatch it. So if you missed for whatever reason, or you're on the, I know some people are in the West Coast and they're like, it's really early, which I feel down to my bones because I'm not a morning person. So if it's early and you want to just send in your questions and watch the replays, that's all cool too. But otherwise, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Have a great time, and we will see you next week. Bye, guys.